we've just got some news into us. Another earthquake has struck the Turkey-Syrian border region. Now, at this point in time, we understand it has a magnitude of 6.4. We don't have any other details at this stage about further damage. This, of course, comes 2 weeks after that devastating quake that killed more than 47,000 people and left mass destruction across that area. I want to go to Adana, Turkey, where our Nada Bashir is standing by. Nada, we're just getting some very brief information into us, but I understand you've been speaking again to survivors of that major earthquake from 2 weeks ago. I can't imagine how traumatized many more people are with another earthquake having just hit.
Linda, it is astonishing that people here are still, of course, reeling from this earthquake, and now there is news of another earthquake, 6.4 according to the Emergency Disaster Management Authority here in Turkey. Epicenter so far reported in the province of Hatay, which was one of the hardest hit by this month's earthquake. Some 80% of the buildings there collapsed, about to collapse, or have been deemed unnecessary of demolition because they are simply so unsafe. And I have to say, here in Adana, we are quite a way away from that epicenter reported just in the last half hour or so, and we felt the tremor to the extent that this entire hotel that we're currently in at the moment evacuated the building, many rushing out, children being pulled out of fear. And you can imagine the trauma, the emotional trauma that these people in southeastern Turkey have already been through. So much loss, so much destruction. There is still so much fear here in southeast Turkey. So to go through that again is difficult to explain, and we felt it over here. But of course, it is reported that that epicenter, that the worst of the tremors was felt further east towards Gaziantep and Hatay. And we are still learning more details about this, still waiting for more information from the authorities regarding the extent of this latest quake, regarding the extent of the potential destruction and damage this may or may not have caused. But of course, there is a real sense of urgency, growing pressure on the Turkish government and authorities, a real sense of fear here amongst the Turkish population. And of course, there's already been so much devastation, so much destruction, and we are learning that the Turkish authority is trying to step up calls for accountability. They are carrying out investigation into reports of building codes not being respected or enforced properly. So far, more than 400 people identified as potential suspects, at least 120 people arrested. And when we're talking about the destruction and the devastation, more than 100,000 buildings have been so far examined and have been deemed as requiring either demolition or have already collapsed. And there are still hundreds more thousands of buildings to be assessed and evaluated. So this is a significant feat for the Turkish government, and this latest tremor, this latest quake is only going to add to that. Now, we've been speaking to some of those impacted by the earthquake. Some of them have already been evacuated to other parts of the city, including in Istanbul, where we were able to meet with some of the children who have sadly lost their loved ones, been separated from family. Some have lost their parents, and their names still aren't known. Take a look.
Their laughter hides their loss. Pulled from the rubble, their parents still missing. The identities of some, a mystery. This orphanage has become home to some of Turkey's youngest earthquake survivors. Authorities say the search for living relatives continues, but some of these children are believed to have lost everyone.
When we first received these children, we observed signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. The children were very fragile. So, as well as providing shelter and security to these kids, we also began providing psychosocial support.
The devastation wrought by the earthquake has left countless children orphaned or separated from their loved ones. And while authorities say they have so far managed to reunite more than 900 children with their families, many are still waiting to be processed. And NGOs fear that millions could be at risk of acute psychological distress.
They already have their loved ones lost. They already have their homes lost. They already have their schools lost. All schools except are gone. But if they also lose their hopes, that means loss of generations.
That loss is all too familiar to this Syrian family. 3 generations now temporarily hosted in this small one-bed apartment in Istanbul. Their home in Antakya, now a mountain of rubble. 26-year-old Ragad says she was the first to wake when the earthquake struck, pulling her mother and 4 sisters to safety just moments before their home collapsed.
When the earthquake happened, I think it's Yawm al-Qiyamah.
Judgment Day.
Yes, there is a very big sound that it's not going out from my head. Every time it's here.
You still hear it?
Yes.
But this is not the first time Ragad and her family have faced a tragedy of this magnitude. Originally from the Syrian city of Homs, the constant barrage of airstrikes forced the family to flee their home in 2014. But having her life upended by catastrophe time and time again has taken its toll on Ragad's mental health.
That's not my first time I get alive from a war or something bad. And every time I said, why? And now I'm asking myself, why I'm alive? Maybe it was easy if I'm not, yeah.
Easier than going through this?
Yes, because it's not my first time that I'm start from zero.
Yeah.
Starting from zero for these children may not be as challenging. It's a catastrophe they are simply too young to understand. But just like Ragad and her family, their lives have been changed forever by the earthquake.
And look, there is still mounting pressure on the Turkish government. There are still further calls for international support. And just over the weekend and today, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken was visiting those affected areas, announcing further funding support for that humanitarian relief effort from the US government, now totaling about $180 million to both Turkey and Syria in support of that aid effort. But of course, the destruction is widespread. This is a process that is going to take months, if not years, and that need for international support is only going to grow. Linda?
All right, Nada Bashir for us in Adana, Turkey. Thanks so much for that report. We will bring you more details on that latest earthquake to hit the Turkish-Syrian border as it comes to hand.